It's called Show Me the Money, Funding, Resources, and Co-Designing the California Farm to School Network. Of course, this was a little bit tongue-in-cheek so that we could just have something fun to share. But I'm really excited to be sharing these resources with you today and just learning more about what you have to offer. So what to bring to this session? You'll need to bring note paper or something to write with and a space to reflect. So this is a headspace thing. I'm going to be throwing a lot of different grant opportunities at you. And what we want to make sure that you're able to do is process them and understand what's available to you. Hold on one sec while I pull up my chat. Rachel, were you able to drop in the link to the digital workbook? So one of the resources that we have available to you is a digital workbook. So you can pull that up. It's going to be in the chat for you, a link to it. And that will allow you, you could take notes in there and you can track the different sessions that are going on. So if you need something to write on, you can use that workbook. Today's goals, we're going to match up stuff that we found in the chat with this. So first thing is a mindset piece that we're going to cover. At the end of this session, I want you to truly believe that there's an abundance of funding out there for your farm to school project. One of my good friends, Amber Stott, who you could see us in the chat earlier going back and forth about our edible schoolyard experience before. Amber posts great resources about this all the time, but there really are an abundance of resources for us to attract. The second thing is we're going to practice. So I'm going to go through some of the federal, state, and local grants that are available and give you time to process them and think about which of these is actually right for me. And then lastly, we're going to do some reflection. So please share the best ways that our network can support your fundraising efforts. So when I talk about co-designing the Farm to School Network, that's that piece. Because all we do at the Farm to School Network is ask you what you need and then try to give it to you. That's our goal. Here's the first step now in this grant conversation and in this fundraising conversation. Before we even begin looking at grants, before we even begin applying for grants, our most important jobs are here. We need to engage our key stakeholders, including youth and historically underserved communities. You don't apply for a grant for somebody else. You apply for grants with your community, right? A lot of the time we might have an idea, oh man, we need to improve the school meals for our kids. Well, have you asked the kids what they think about the school meals? What's their favorite food item? What would they like to see changed? How are they incorporated into this conversation? We have to include our key stakeholders in this process. So that can include youth and it should include youth and historically underserved communities. For a lot of these things, it means talking to your school board for the first time. Or maybe the most important person for your school garden program to thrive is the maintenance technician who can actually, help you with irrigation issues on the side. So you never know who it is in each specific space, but we need to make sure we're engaging key stakeholders. Okay? Once you've engaged your key stakeholders, you have this team around you, you have to work to create a shared vision together. So you'll do some sort of visioning exercise, whether it says, we're going to build a garden right there. So I need the principal, the maintenance team, and a couple other teachers or parent volunteers to help me. We're going to build the garden. Then I'm going to use my science class in the garden. We're going to do science in the garden. And then 2 years from now, we're going to get a greenhouse. Everyone can get on board with that vision right at the start. It's clear and it will help everyone bond together. You'll find where your yeses are, where your nos are, and kind of have a boundary for your project. And you can start chipping away at those people who might have been on the edge or not all in at the start. So you'll engage your key stakeholders, you'll create a shared vision, and then when you actually find some of these grant opportunities that you might want to apply for, you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? Grants are not free money. That might be an oxymoron, but grants are not free money. There's trade-offs. So one of the trade-offs is the application process. I think we've all been up till midnight or 1 a.m. working on a grant application, stressing ourselves out. And is that worth it? Maybe not if the funding level is what it is. There's reporting and administrative costs. So you're going to have to administer this grant. You're going to have to track your hours. You're going to have to track overhead. You're going to have to do all of that. And then lastly, collaborating. Sometimes one of your partners might not ever invoice on time. They might not ever fill out the reports on time. That can be really stressful and overwhelming. So you have to ask yourself, is this outcome worth it for these extra added layers of work? And then I like these two things here. Matching your mission, of course, you want it mission aligned, but is it a patch or a pilot? Grants can be good for either of those opportunities. So are you patching your program where in essence there's like a gap in fundraising and you can apply for this grant that will fill it in? That's a great use for a grant. Or if you're piloting a new opportunity. So let's say you already do Harvest of the Month in your school cafeteria. It's really exciting, but you want to see what it's like to take kids out to a farm. That's a great opportunity to apply for a grant to pilot that farm field trip, to add a layer on top of what you're already doing. You'll be able to test and see if it's sustainable. You'll be able to see what level of staffing you will need. All of those things you can explore with the grant. And, so you can weigh these as we're going through these opportunities. The next slide I have is about where do we look for grants and funding? So there's federal level funds, there's state level funds, and then local level that we're going to talk about. There are lots of options. Like I said, it's actually really overwhelming. So stay strong. This is a slide that shows all of the USDA grants and loans that support farm to school activities. I want to shout out Juliana Arnett and the USDA Office of Community Food Systems team, because wow, did this save some time for me by them creating this image. So it's a little bit blurry, but you can see the link at the top is to usda.gov/farm-to-school, and you can find all of these resources there too. They have each of these grant opportunities organized by eligibility. So we had, like I said, a big, broad group of people on the Zoom today. We could see it in the chat. But if you are a K-12 public, private, or Indian tribal school, you'll see that there's 3 grants available to you at the federal level: farm to school planning and implementation, equipment assistance, and then community facilities grants and loans. So you can go through this, see which ones are options for you to be the lead applicant on, and then do a little bit more of a deep dive on their website. I'm going to highlight some of them for us here now. I wanted to share it. One more thing I want to say before we go to the next slide is that just because you aren't on, like, let's say you're a K-12 public, private, or Indian tribal school, like the farmers market promotion grant and local food promotion grant isn't on your list. But that doesn't mean that you can't apply in partnership with someone from one of those other categories. So if you are a farmer, rancher, or landowner, you could see the first grant for you is farmers market and local food promotion. So they're eligible for that, whereas a K-12 school is not. But if you work together, you can still apply for that opportunity and get access to that funding. So I have a couple concrete examples for you here. So federal grants. The USDA Farm to School grant is the OG, the one everybody knows, I think, for farm to school funding. $20,000 to $100,000, 25% match. It's designed to improve access to local foods in eligible schools. I want to shout out California. Pat yourself on the back. California has more farm to school grantees, recipients, than any other state, and it's actually not that close. We're like in the high 20s, and I think the next one is like in the mid-teens. So we have a lot of farm to school activity, which is great. If you're going to do training, support operations, planning, equipment purchases, school garden development, partnership development, or program implementation, this can be a great grant for you. And if you've received a farm to school grant and you're on this call today, please say me, us in the chat, and we're just going to clap for you. So shout you out. Nice job. Congratulations. We're proud of you. You're cool. And we can't wait to learn more about what you have. Food Literacy Center, yay. Everybody, this is so cool. There's so many great programs out there. So this is it's a known resource. It's a great resource to use. One of the things, well, anyway, I'll keep going. Shout you out. Shout out all of you guys. Thank you. Okay. This next USDA grant is a little bit less well known. This is the USDA Farmers Market Promotion Grant. It's $50,000 to $500,000, and it takes a 25% match. $500,000 is a lot of money. Just wanted to say that. Okay. It's designed to support the development, coordination, and expansion of direct producer to consumer markets to help increase access and availability to local and regionally produced agriculture products. So direct producer to consumer is like a farmer's market when you're selling direct, or a farm stand versus selling to retail or selling to wholesale to a grocer. So how does that connect to farm to school when we might be selling to an institution? Well, there's a number of ways. You could do harvest of the month, where kids are learning about that farmer's market item so that they could go out to that farmer's market and then buy. So that would connect that direct to consumer relationship. So that's a school trip to a farmer's market or a harvest of the month program. You can do either of those things. You can do food service director trips to markets. So let's say you're a regional organization that supports farm to school. You have a number of school nutrition directors who want to meet more local producers. You could apply for this type of funding to set up like a farmer's market tour and to meet the producers. It'd be really great. And then the last example that I have here is coordinated marketing materials with the cafeteria. So if you have a sticker on an item that comes from a local producer, and then they have that same sticker on their booth at the farmer's market, then kids and families can start building those connections. So this is another great opportunity. You got to think for one like this, who are the key stakeholders I need to engage? You have to know who's running your farmer's market, who the farmer's market manager is, and any other producers or anything like that that would be involved. So if you wanted to apply for this grant, you got to start building those relationships first. Okay. The last federal level grant that I'm going to share with you is the local food promotion grant. It's $25,000 to $100,000, again with a 25% match. It's designed to support the development and expansion of local and regional food business enterprises to increase domestic consumption of and access to locally and regionally produced agriculture products, and to develop new market opportunities for the rest of that sentence. I can't even believe I read that whole thing. So really, we're looking at opening new markets for regional producers. What's a great new market for people to sell to? How about schools, right? So there's a planning grant and an implementation grant. Again, you would need to go to that eligibility list and build your key stakeholders from there. If you're really interested in building out that neighborhood food system, that community food system, that regional food system that's resilient, connects classroom, cafeteria, and community, these could be opportunities for you. They're not listed under the K through 12 eligibility, but you can still get access to those funds for those types of projects if you build the partnerships. Okay, so I have some pros and cons that I want to share with you about USDA grants really quickly before we do a reflection. One of the pros is that this is pretty significant funding, and it's in a variety of categories. So you could see the different ways that you could apply and get access to these funds. One of the challenges might be an increased load on applications. Normally these are a little bit more complex than a simple local application at your local hardware store. So it could be a heavier lift on administration, application, and reporting. But that kind of gets weighed out with the funding and with the opportunity to do peer-to-peer learning. That's something that's great with the Farm to School grant, where you get to talk to other grantees and learn about how things work, and share best practices and learn as you go. So there's those opportunities. All right, it's 9:36, so we're gonna keep rolling. The next step is for you to pause and reflect and process. So in your notes, please answer the following questions. So I asked you to have something to write on, something to write with. We're calling that back right now. So what's your biggest takeaway from what we just covered about the best practices in grant funding and on those federal grant opportunities? I'm going to give you 90 seconds to think about what's your biggest takeaway from what we just covered. I'm just going to sit here quietly while you process and journal. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay, we already have some people modeling this for us in the chat, but if you're able to pause and reflect and share, what was your biggest takeaway from what we just covered? If you're able to take this from your notebook and type it in the chat, you don't have to do this, but we'd love to hear what your biggest takeaways are in the chat, and I'll just pick a couple out. And I see some questions came in. Gina, one on finding a person to help apply. We're going to get into supports at the end of the session, so I definitely hear that. And then Melinda Swanson, if you're able to clarify your question, I think we could get to that later. Then I'll highlight some of these. Okay. Marcy Masimoto shared partnerships are central, definitely. Okay, and then Holly Jacobson said stakeholder engagement and planning for grants together. It's a group effort. Totally. Okay, and then Amy from Sierra Harvest said, weigh the cost benefit of taking on a federal grant. Make sure you have the partnerships in place before you even apply. And grants are wonderful for expansion or testing new ideas. Those are great. I'm so happy with those learning outcomes so far. And having that clear vision will also be really important. Okay. Thank you for sharing, thank you. And I see that Amy and Michael have covered me in the chat since I didn't link it in the presentation. That's the link to that funding chart. Amy just dropped it in. So thank you, Amy. Okay, so now we have state level grant opportunities. This is focused on different state level grants. So we're thinking of state agencies like the California Department of Food and Agriculture, that's us. Cal Recycle, which is part of the Cal EPA or Environmental Protection Agency. Of course, the California Department of Education has grants available. And then there's also some of these adjacent ones to Farm to School, right? So if we just go down this list, there's the Farm to School Incubator grant, which we'll talk about. Secretary Ross mentioned it. There's the Specialty Crop Block grant. We'll definitely talk about that. That's how we funded this conference, so it's helpful. There's the Healthy Soils grant. So this is for producers who want to adapt more climate smart practices. There's a whole climate smart farming strategies grant page. And then there's these other options, CTE, Cal Recycle, Green Waste. If you're a producer, there's the CDFA stuff. If you are a nonprofit, there's basically any of these you can apply in partnership. But if you're really thinking like from a waste reduction point of view, or if you're a school nutrition director focused on that piece of the puzzle, there are Cal Recycle Green Waste Reduction grants and composting grants. What I would suggest to you in order to find these is one, in our recording and in our final notes that go out, I'll make sure to share a list of all the grants mentioned, so you'll get that. But the next thing is Google is your friend. Google Cal Recycle grants. Each state agency has a grants page and you can pull them up at any time. So do some digging when you need it, and I'll highlight a couple of winners here. So this is our Farm to School Incubator program from CDFA. It was pilot funded, but like Secretary Ross said, it's in the governor's budget, and hopefully it will go through for a $10 million expansion of this grant. We're currently reviewing applications, which is awesome, and we hope to announce winners by the end of the month. This grant is focused on two different tracks. So there's two opportunities to get funded. The first one is local farm to school innovation. So this is how you and your school district connect the cafeteria, classroom, and community. That's it. So how are you bridging that gap? There's money to buy food, and then there's money to integrate it into the educational spaces. So if it's a school garden or a culinary program, whatever. But you get to pick and lay it out. We tried to make it pretty broad so that you pick how you're using the money. And then track 2 was regional farm to school partnerships. So remember that big map of the regions that we had earlier? I had you pick your region. This is about how do we scale up farm to school procurement efforts in those areas, knowing that a lot of those local producers might get access to those schools. So that's track 2 and track 1. We had, out of $8.5 million available, we had over $12 million requested. So thank you to everyone who's applied. Over 96 educational agencies were represented, which is a ton. So we're really, really excited about that. So have this on your radar. If the budget makes it through, we'll know in June. If the budget makes it through and we have this funding, then you'll see an announcement from us later in the fall, probably around October, November is when we would want to open it up again. So have this one on your radar. It's California specific. for local. So if you're small scale, just thinking about your district now, or if you're bigger scale, there's 2 tracks available for you. Okay. The next grant opportunity I want to share is the CDFA Specialty Crop Block Grant. This is $50,000 to $450,000. That's a big number. So there are a number of specialty crop recipients I know who do farm to school activities. I think one of the organizations that has best utilized specialty crop over the years is the Center for Eco-Literacy. So if you've seen any California Thursdays materials, a lot of those were funded with specialty crop. They do great work. So each year CDFA conducts a 2-phase competitive solicitation process to award funds to projects that enhance the competitiveness of California specialty crops. What's a specialty crop? Great question, glad you asked. Specialty crops include fruits and vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruits, horticulture, and nursery crops, including floriculture. And we learned yesterday, after a lot of questioning, that acorns, a traditional Native American food, tribal food, is also a specialty crop. So there's opportunity to use specialty crops to tell all different types of stories with food. And what we're thinking about with farm to school connections could look like this: grow it in the garden and serve it in the cafeteria. So if you're, let's say that Santa Rosa plums that are locally grown are the specialty crop that you've applied to support, then you could plant some plum trees in your garden and then purchase some plums and have them on the salad bar or in your grab and go boxes. Check, check, check. You could fund your farm to school collaborative. If your farm to school collaborative is helping schools buy local specialty crops, get some funding for it, grow it out, apply. Okay? If you want to do a marketing partnership with videos featuring local producers and products, it's another opportunity with specialty crop. So if you're already buying this stuff, but you're not telling the story, you could apply for money to tell the story and do communication. It's really cool. And then lastly, I put on here to do a guide, how to buy it, how to serve it, and how to get kids to eat it, a guide for whatever specialty crop you have. There's a lot of opportunities here for you to access these funds and get creative with how it can work for you. Okay. Next one is the California Department of Education manages, through USDA funding, the National School Lunch Program Equipment Assistance Grant. This grant is designed to help schools serve healthier meals with a focus on serving more fruits and vegetables, improving food safety and energy efficiency, and expanding food access. There's no cost sharing or matching fund requirements, but grants are competitive and based on need. I feel like I'm in a telemarketing thing. They are competitive and based on need, so make sure you incorporate that. But most school nutrition teams already know about this grant. So this is why it's a great tool for anybody operating outside of school nutrition, because you can learn and have empathy for your school nutrition teams. How are you guys using this grant opportunity? What's most important in your kitchen? That's a long-term relationship building strategy that you can utilize with this grant. So whether you're a school nutrition director hoping to apply and receive funding for new equipment, or you're a school garden person hoping to tap in and learn more about school nutrition so you can bridge the gap between the classroom and the cafeteria, this opportunity will be a great one for you. Okay, and I think I have, only one more, because we are running out of time. So state grants, career technical education. This is a really important one. CTE funding is a way to turn volunteer school garden teachers into full-time agriculture educators or culinary educators. So there's CTE money available at the state level and at the federal level for drawing down, and they put language in here, is a state education, economic, and workforce development initiative with the goal of providing pupils in kindergarten and grades 1 through 12 with inclusive knowledge and skills necessary to transition to employment in post-secondary education. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Do you know your school nutrition director or your school district CTE coordinator? That person has access to funds. They're institutionalized, it's part of your district plan. They can help you access these funds and grow your program. So go talk to your CTE coordinator. The other thing I want to show you and highlight from this section is that it's available for grades 1 through 12 in kindergarten. So CTE doesn't just start in your high school auto shop class, right? It doesn't just start in your welding elective. No, you can go cradle through career and pull down those funds all the way K through 12. And I know in YOLO they're working on that. So we'll share more resources, but remember that. Okay, and then join us Friday at 10 a.m. for more information on career technical education. It's going to be a session led by Jackie Jones from California FFA on how to access and institutionalize your program. All right, we're going to do another 90-second reflection, and then we're going to go through these opportunities. And during this reflection, I'll look through the chat and identify some questions that were asked. So what's your biggest takeaway from what we just covered? 90 seconds in your notebook, 30 seconds in the chat. Okay, everyone, as soon as you're done writing it in your notebook, if you're able to share, if you want to, you can share it in the chat. Again, we're writing it in our notebook so that you have it long-term, right? You have it in your notebook. It's not just going to disappear after this. But if you're willing, please write it in the chat when you're able. There's some grants you hadn't considered before. That's helpful. I do see a question on here about the equipment grant. How do you get noticed when you're a small school? The size of the school doesn't matter in the competitive process for that application. So it's really exciting. It's mostly about making sure that you're communicating your school district need. There's also questions about slides. We can definitely share those. Yeah, CTE K-12 is huge, 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 huge. Okay. Suzanne, I see that you, oh, I scrolled my chat. There it goes. Need to establish more collaboration between elementary and high school programs. There's definitely opportunity there. That's a great takeaway. Thank you for sharing it. Okay, and then I see Cassidy. Hi, Cassidy. Learn to read thoroughly through the grants before applying because you may be eligible, even though at first glance it doesn't seem like it. Those are great reflections. I love it. I love it. Okay, so then we're going to keep moving. We have 5 minutes left for our session. So we're going to do local resources. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these because it's mostly about brainstorming. And then we're going to talk about how we can best support you because we have to get to that. So local resources, I have a couple of things I want to highlight. One, it's 3 freaking pages long. So there's a lot of local resources out there. It's mostly about your creativity and the limits that sometimes we put on ourselves about finding funding. So there's your school district LCAP budget. Every school district decides how they spend their money through the LCAP process. So get involved in that. It stands for Local Control Accountability Plan. There's supposed to be a series of public meetings to make those budgets. So get involved in the LCAP. The Rotary clubs are a great resource. You need $5,000, go talk to the Rotary. They can normally handle that. And there are a lot of Rotaries to choose from, and they all work together. So if you have one Rotary that's really into it, they can actually stack their money on top of other Rotaries to give you a larger award as well. So know that the Rotaries are out there as a solution. There's a number of other places on here, Home Depot, Whole Kids Foundation, Save Mart, Sprouts, Rayleigh's, Bonds, all the grocers, your local Chamber of Commerce. And if you have a PTA, please go talk to them. PTAs love gardens. Come on, host a tea party, do something fun. Other local resources. The one I want to highlight on here for you, honestly, is like 4 down. It's the richest person you know. You should definitely have that person out to your garden or into your classroom. It's not an awkward thing. Just bring them out, show them what you're doing, and they would love to buy you a wheelbarrow. I've seen it happen a million times. So talk to them. Don't be afraid to invite people to see the work that you're doing, whether it's your salad bar, your school garden, your school district farm, there's opportunities. The other piece on here is the UC Extension, Master Gardeners, Preservers, Composters, they can help you. So if you search UC in your county, you'll get that info. And then lastly, on local resources, your youth voices, your school nutrition directors, and then us in the CDFA team. We are here for you. That's all of our emails. Email us, ask us for help, follow up with us after this session that you need help. We'll do that. Okay, so we're gonna skip that one because of course I went long. And the next thing I want you to do is think through right now, in your notes, answer the following questions. If there were grant writing to support you, like there's someone to help you with your grants. What did I write? If there were grant writing supports for you from, yuck, sorry, what would that look like? What questions do you have that still need to be answered? And what ongoing support would you need to secure funding? So if there were 3 things that we could do for you from CDFA, reflect on them, write these down in your notes. And as soon as you can, when you're done, I'll give you 30 seconds to think it through. What could CDFA do the best to support you on your grant funding journey? Okay, so I see some people are already writing it in the chat. Amber, thank you. Funding for grant writers, set up a way for questions to be answered while working on various grants, and letters of support. Helpful, helpful. Online webinars, samples of approved applications. We'll see if we can do that. Sample applications, okay. A grant hotline. Ooh, I love that. Time to plan and develop. What's worked, what hasn't. Okay. Then here's what I'm going to share with you really quick, because I have probably 30 seconds left. This is our capacity building moving forward. These are our plans for the network. We have establishing regional facilitation teams. So we're going to fund regional facilitators in each region, so you have a local support hub for you. That's coming this summer. We're doing producer engagement sessions to connect to producers. That's happening this summer. We're going to be doing youth and community roundtables to hear what people need in the community. That's starting ASAP. You're going to hear about that in the closing session. And then lastly, there's quarterly webinars focused on upcoming funding opportunities. So we want to set up these opportunities for you. What we're going to do is go through the chat, identify the things that you've shared here, and then work to include them into our practices. So we see a lot of great ideas coming from there, especially around sample applications. So we're going to work to build in your suggestions here. Okay, I'm out of time. Shouts out to me, shouts out to all of you.